start to prepare, get in the car and head back to Akron. And as soon as I get home, I'll start my treatment. And I'll do the same all day, tomorrow from before we leave to go to Boston. And then once we get into Boston, I'll do that as well. Try to get as much sleep as I can, with tonight and with tomorrow and even on Sunday before the game that's the best recovery that you can possibly get is when you're sleeping. So
Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, heroes and villains. I'm your host, Deshaun Fauntleroy. I know your time is precious, so we're going to get right into today's show. I don't have anything fancy for you, no fancy transitions. We're going to get right to the meat of the matter. Today, we're going to be discussing 3 of the worst things that you can do as an elite athlete. 1 is maintain terrible nutrition, ignore your sleep, and disregard active recovery. Now, before I go any further, for your intellectual consumption, I have some references for you that I completed for this project. And one of my references is Dr. Mary Morrell. She has a PhD. I want to say she's out of the United Kingdom, but this is from one of her YouTube presentations on the relationship of sleep and recovery for performance in elite athletes. This was presented by the Physiological Society in Nottingham, United Kingdom. The other reference that I have for you is by Tudor Bompa, Periodization, Theory, and Methodology of Training. And the last one is the Weightlifting Encyclopedia, a guide to world-class performance by Arthur Dressler, affectionately known as Artie Dressler. Nevertheless, we're going to open this up with some nutrition. So I wanted to discuss nutrition, Sean. And one of the first questions that I had is, why is nutrition vital for sports performance?
Okay. The reason I like this topic is because it can be very, very cumbersome. I mean, there's so much information out there. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of things that people use for one person and think it works for another person instead of, addressing it to each person's individual needs. Now, as we're older and our economic status allows, we can normally go to a professional and have them, write things up for us and lead us along that path of proper nutrition, especially if we're athletes. But from the level that I've been working with the youngsters, when I was a strength coach and athletic trainer at the local high school, I would just see the eating habits of the young kids, even coming into training. And I used to just think, man, don't they know that's not good for them? I mean, the answer to that was no, they don't know. No one ever taught them. So it's really important to reach down to the youngsters because they're being bombarded with a lot of information and a lot of information is misinformation. They think anything is going to work, and especially when they're preparing for the games. So, when you're dealing with nutrition with a young athlete, it's best to keep it as simple as possible. Again, you don't want to make it like it's rocket science or astrophysics because they'll just look at you with this glossed over look. But I want to give you an analogy regarding nutrition. So what we do, we have a car. We treat our cars, like they're our children. I mean, we tune them up. We put the right things in them. We don't buy cheap tires. Make sure there's water in the radiator and spark plugs. Everything you want, to make sure the car runs perfectly. So there you have it. It's the same thing with these young athletes. When they're performing, whether it be practice or coming to the games, they have to treat their bodies like these cars that we treat. Want to put the proper things in it and stay away from those things that may not allow them to perform at an optimal level. So it's important because it helps you perform at an optimal level. It gives you the energy you need to perform. You don't want to run out of fuel And then if you run out of fuel, they're sluggish and they can't perform. So it's important for nutrition. And if you look at the long haul, it's important for life, because if you're starting to implement those healthy habits as a youth, when you become an adult, you still remember some of those things and you can implement them into your life. And especially they help you, avoid some of these diseases that you can see that comes from improper nutrition. So not only does it help them when they're younger, it can help them lifelong. So that's why it's important.
Are you riding in the bucket or are you riding in the bins? Are you just going to put unleaded fuel into your high performance vehicle, or are you going to put the premium in there? It's the same as being an athlete. You have to, it's simple. You just put the premium in there. That's the bottom line. So one of the other things that I wanted to ask you, Sean, is what is the process that an athlete must consider when focusing on proper nutrition?
One thing I would tell my parents and the players when they listen, um, use your home, use your kitchen, uh, use what's readily available in the house. Now, there may be some junk stuff in the house, but there's more than enough information out there that can teach you how to eat properly using some of the things in your home. That would be the first and foremost, is teaching them, how to eat properly, the proper foods to eat. Um, that would be the most benefit. But one thing I wanted to touch on was the carbohydrates, because we hear all of these, carbs make you fat, you know, don't eat this carb, don't eat that carb, and so when you're dealing with athletes, carbs are what athletes need. It's the primary fuel source for activity, and they have to make sure that they're fueling their bodies with the carbs. And so many times it doesn't matter if it's a simple carb or a complex carb. And when it's in competition, you do want a simple carb because you want it to be digested quickly, get to the muscles, and so you can function. Because what carbohydrates do, they're broken down into glucose, which is then stored in the muscle as glycogen, and that glycogen is used by the muscles as fuel to perform. So that is why carbohydrates are are important for an athlete. So they should not get caught up into this. I don't want to eat too much carbs. They should not even consider that, because that is a major fuel source for them. And then if someone wants to get into the weeds of it, in general terms, 6 to 10 grams per kilogram of body weight is the carbs that the body requires. But I always tell them, just eat the carbs prior to competition, whether it be days out or hours before the competition. We do know, though, if you're exercising probably less than 90 minutes, your body generally has enough glycogen stores, and the glycogen again is muscle fuel, so it has enough stores for you do the activity. But if you're doing 3 or 4 hours of an event, say like a basketball, baseball, or baseball gets into that, and football, where you're constantly banging, we need to replenish those carbohydrate stores, and that's where things like Gatorade, Powerade, and maybe some energy bars, or even some fruits come into play to replenish those stores, so the athlete can continue to function at an optimal level.
I agree with you without going too far into the weeds, as they say. We do have to take a turn, and every now and then we got to go to where the devil cares to tread, and protein intake and its importance in the diet. I want to hear your thoughts on that, because you should be concerned. We hear that sometimes you should consume X amount of protein per your body weight. And it can become confusing for the young athlete. It can become confusing to the parent, and they can wind up chasing their tails. How do we simplify this, man? What are your thoughts on protein and its importance in the diet?
Yeah. Well, I'll jump into we just a tad. Well, the average individual, 1.2 to 1.4 grams per kilogram of body weight is what they probably should consume as far as protein intake. Athletes needs a much greater because of the intensity of exercise throughout the week, and then game, and then uh, the refuel post game. So theirs is a little bit higher, which would go probably 1.7, maybe even 2.0 grams per gram of per kilogram of body weight. So their needs are greater. Um, One thing I would always, and like I mentioned earlier, I would tell the parents, use your kitchen, use your kitchen, use your kitchen, because some of these kids get so caught up into going to these nutrition stores and getting these protein drinks and what's going on is that they're losing. The parents are spending a lot of money. Now, if you're in an area where your economic status is not that great, uh, that could be overbearing on your pocketbook, or your mother just looks at you and says, "No, that's not going to happen." So the best bet is to, again, I can't overemphasize as much enough. Use your kitchen to fuel your body. But getting back to the protein intake, because kids even at this age, the high school level, they know it's for muscle development. Because we're breaking down muscle tissue as we're exercising and or playing in the sports. So protein intake is important, but the benefits are greater post exercise. Energy protein does not contribute that greatly far as energy needs. So it's bigger on the regeneration after the activity. And then they also talk to kids or talk to individuals about taking in so much protein to increase this muscle mass. But the thing is, the human body is going to just take what it needs, and the rest is going to go away, or it's going to be broken down and stored as fat. So you really don't want to go hog wild and eating so much protein, because then you start to gain weight, and if we're gaining weight, that's not, for some of us, gaining weight is not conducive to exercise, to sports performance. If you bog down with too much weight. And also, too much protein does put a strain on our kidneys, because it has to process that protein, and so your kidneys are constantly working. So, but one thing I do want to again mention, just steer clear of so many of those protein drinks that a lot of people are asking these kids to take in, because there are more than enough ways for them to get enough protein just by, going to the grocery store and buying the proper ingredients, such as a few resources, or legumes or beans. That's another name for beans, legumes. Of course, milk. If you're lactose intolerant, you may have to stay away from milk and find another source. Pumpkin seeds, peas, broccoli, or vegetables, they have a protein source. Edamame, asparagus, and of course, lean meats: turkey, chicken, fish. I guess you can go lamb, and things like that are just your normal sources of protein. But the one thing that I used to tell our kids is, far as replenishing post exercise, and the literature shows this, is chocolate milk is a great one, because you have the whey and the casein, so you have a combination of the protein and the carbohydrates. So when you deplete those stores, just a quick resource is some chocolate milk to refuel your body and prepare you for the next day's activity. Or just gets you something in your body quickly, and then once you get home, you can have a meal and enjoy it and refuel your body.
I like the simplicity of it. And I know you mentioned post workout. How important is pre and post game nutrition?
Well, pregame prepares them for competition. So it's getting the right fuel in your body. Like I would often see, uh, the kids at the high school level running in, uh, to the locker room with their McDonald's, their bag of chips, and or what do you call those things? A cinnamon bun, just things like that. And yeah, that is a source of fuel, but it's quick fuel. And if you're just eating that type of stuff, sooner or later it's going to leave your body. It's going to come in and it's going to leave your body, and you're going to be at a deficit. You may be sluggish. So pregame is important that a few days out you start eating something like a complex carbohydrate where it's whole grain, not the white floury pastas. Like you can get brown rice or whole wheat pasta, things like that. Or if you can't do it, just eat the regular carbohydrates. So that is fueling your body pre-game, and then eating after the game is replenishing what you lost during the competition. So it's very important that they get into the habits of proper intake pre competition and post competition.
Considering post game, post workout, what does the literature say, or what's your opinion on eating? How long after the game or after the workout, as far as utilizing, the protein?
Well, I've seen it. I've gone to conferences, and I guess the one guy, I can't remember his name. He's actually the nutritionist for the LA Lakers. I wish I could remember his name so I could give him credit for this. But we used to always say the literature was, well, you have to have it, within 30 minutes of your activity. And I guess the research showed it could go up to as long as 2 hours. So yeah, you have a little bit of time uh, that you don't have to quickly ingest for post game. So, but if you're able to, so if I'm a professional, and if we've ever been in these locker rooms, they have everything at their disposal right there. So after the game, I'm taking stuff in immediately, because I don't know what's going to happen a little bit later if I'm be able to get to it. So I would take it immediately if you have it readily available. But if you don't, I would not sweat it as long as you can get something in within those couple of hours. And by the time 2 hours come around, you should be at a place where you can have some post competition nutrition to refuel your body. So yeah, the literature has changed. Uh, Again, when they used to think you had to have it, within 30 minutes, but now that time has extended out.
I love to saute my vegetables in coconut oil. I love to saute them definitely in olive oil, depending on my mood. I also love,
Mhm.
a base of my salads to be with avocado. I love the avocado in my
Mhm.
salads, and often we hear
Exactly.
how bad fat is for you. What does the literature say about this? And should an athlete avoid fat intake?
No, they should not avoid fat. Just like with a lot of things, there are some good things and there are some bad things, and so it is with fats. Fat is a good fuel source. Uh, I guess the literature now is showing that higher intakes in some cases uh, help people lose weight. Because when we eat fat, it satiates us, it makes us feel fuller, so we don't have to. We're not as hungry, and not going to eat, as soon after. Um, but again, too much of the wrong kind isn't good. So, good sources of fat are, like you mentioned, avocado that we put in our salads, or we do other things with it. Nuts are great sources. Olive oil, fatty fish such as salmon and tuna. So it is fat is a good thing. Don't run from it. There are more than enough some movies out there that talks about uh, you know uh, the proper amount of fat to take in. Actually, the fear of fat is what really catapulted us into this diabetic. Um, I guess I call it an epidemic for the most part, because they kept making us fat is bad, and so they removed the fat out of foods. But again, when you take some fat out, the food is nasty. It doesn't taste very well. So in order to improve the taste, they would pump sugar into it. So now, if you start to eat the sugar, then they started seeing people become fatter. So that whole non-fat craze actually made America fatter because they replaced the fat with sugar and people overconsumed. Because if it said fat free, they go, "Oh, there's no fat in it, so I'm gonna eat more of it," and it had the reverse effect. And so it made us fat just by everybody having a fear of fat. But now we're learning that it's not the enemy that we thought it was. We need fat to absorb some vitamins and minerals, helps us build the cell membranes, the outer covering of a cell membrane, and also a nerve ending, helps with blood clotting, muscle movement, and inflammation. So if you're ingesting the fat, like you said, uh, polyunsaturated, monounsaturated is okay, is good. The olive oils and things like that. And but the one thing you want to stay away from is trans fats. That's proven to uh, not be good for us. So if you are concerned about your fat intake, I encourage you to look at the ingredients on some of our foods to see if there's any trans fats in there and avoid it. But you know, it's a slippery slope. I mean, we're battling against the companies. We're battling against the politicians because the companies are uh, giving the politicians money, and many of them only care about their money. So people have to really take charge of their lives when it comes to nutrition, and just don't be so scared about fats, because it actually is a good thing if you've taken in the right sources.
It sounds like, and parents, if you're listening to this, coaches, if you're listening to this, student athletes especially, when you try to avoid fat, you might just do that, but you're going to run into some fillers such as sugar and probably some other things that are on the label that you can't even pronounce, which isn't man-made, that's going to affect you. And it's going to affect you internally, and eventually it's going to affect you externally
Mm-hmm.
in your performance. I could go further. We'll get to that later. Nevertheless, I wanted to ask you, Sean, what are some pregame considerations an athlete might want to make a part of his or her preparation?
I think I alluded to it earlier, uh, but when we say pregame, I want to extend that out to a few days, not just the day of the game. So if an athlete can start, days out, the one thing they should start looking at is to minimize junk food. Now, I didn't say get rid of it totally, because that's not being realistic. For the most part, the population that I work with, they're young kids, so they're going to eat the junk food. I just tell them to minimize it, and here are some options that you want. Definitely, they want to hydrate. They definitely want to hydrate. Stay minimize the sodas, excess coffee, and definitely the energy drinks. I really wish they would stay away from the energy drinks, because we've seen what those things can do. So much caffeine and sugar in them, and then caffeine is a diuretic, so we're always, you urinate, and so you become dehydrated. So it's important that they take in enough of water. Uh, so they don't run the risk of being dehydrated and going into competition. But energy drinks are a big issue with our kids. They want to, they got have them. These companies have them thinking that's what they need when and truly they don't. And coffee is fine, because coffee, we do know it is a performance enhancer. There's no reason why the Olympic Committee only allows so much coffee for the Olympic athletes, and they do test for it. So coffee is all right, but if that's all you're drinking and you're being excessive, that's too much. They should not eat too close to competition for obviously reasons. There's some digestive issues. So, for instance, if I eat, a healthy meal too close to competition, and then it's time to play, my body is battling whether to send the energy to my muscles and not for digestive purposes. And so, if you have that food sitting in your gut, it can be very uncomfortable. And if your stomach is hurting and you're not even concentrating on playing. So I always say, eat a little something maybe an hour or two before. Don't eat a large meal prior to a game because you're setting yourself up for failure. One other thing that I have here is watch out for anything high in fiber. I don't think that needs any explanation. If you eat something high in fiber, that can be another issue as far as of going to the bathroom. Or nor should you try any new foods because you don't know how your body's going to adjust to it. So I know when I was playing, I had a certain thing I would eat. I would eat a energy bar, some fruit, maybe a sandwich, and it was something that I know would not uh, interfere with my stomach. I do remember one time in junior college, we went to breakfast before our baseball game, and I ate what I ate biscuits and gravy, and I ate like a fool. And so now, it's time for us to play, and my stomach is upset, and I had to get rid of it. I'm not going to tell you how I did because I don't want to encourage anybody to do that, but I had to get the food out of my system, and just so that I could feel just right on playing. So that was a lesson on eating the right food and the right amount. Don't eat something that's going to be so heavy that you can't perform properly. And so, yeah, and again, the one thing that I see these greasy fast foods, uh, you know, stay away from them. It's not going to kill an individual not to have it immediately before a game. Again, fuel your body with the right things, the most nutritious things you can find, and things that's going to sustain them during the course of their game, and so that they can perform properly. So uh, those are some of the things that they want to be aware of. For the most part, if you're a high schooler, your competition, they're not eating this way. They're not taking care of their bodies in this way. So you're already at an advantage because you're feeling your body properly. So when that fourth quarter comes, you're still banging away. They may be on the downside. So that gives you an advantage.
We've often, or a few episodes back, we had a discussion around old school coaches, and I know one of the things regarding old school coaches in probably like the 70s, 80s, even to the early 90s, and the old school coaches would say drinking water made players soft. And they would often withhold water as punishment. We now know how important water is, not only for performance but also for sustained life. What's your thoughts, or what should our audience know and understand about hydration?
Yeah. Well, now that I know better, I know drinking water does not make you soft. Now, there are some cases where some kids may use that as an excuse because, practice is getting a little difficult, but that's for the coach to determine. And I would say if I was a parent, I'd make sure I'm out of practice watching it, sometimes as well, just to just get a feel for what's going on out there. And then we know our kids, if he's trying to, or he or she is trying to slack. But yeah, the withholding of water, man, now that I know uh, that it doesn't make you weak, is actually pretty ludicrous that they're doing that. And, we're seeing so many instances where these kids are having health issues. Um, Also, it may stem from, again, if what they ate during the week, or some kids, because they're on a lower socioeconomic status, they may not have eaten. And so, you're withholding water from them. And, water is vital for our organs. And like you said earlier, it's just to sustain life. And so if you're withholding water from these kids, you are setting yourself up and your school up for a lawsuit. So I don't think, obviously water breaks have to be built in the practice schedule. You also want to make sure it's readily available on the sidelines, even if it's in a squirt bottle, where they can go in and grab some. Uh, they can go in and grab some water if they need to. But again, as I mentioned earlier, the previous question, avoid too much caffeine in energy drinks because they are diuretics and uh, they make us eliminate water. So you want to avoid that. You want to hydrate, obviously, be up to the event. And one thing we got to, as an athletic trainer, you have to be aware, and I've learned this in college, you got to really watch the larger players, the guys with a lot more body fat on them, because their temperature is going to be up, especially if you're in a climate where there's a lot of humidity and it's really hot. Another way to really, if you really want to get into the science of it is, weighing players before and after to see how much fluid they've lost. But I don't know too many high schools that have that at their disposal if they have an athletic trainer who's on staff that can do that. So yeah, for your larger players, you want to make sure that you watch them, that you talk to them, see if they're coherent during the games, and just remind them, hey, stay hydrated, but don't drink too much because that can cause some abdominal discomfort. You can teach your players one quick way to know if you're hydrated enough is to look at the color of your urine. If it's pale yellow, you're in good company. If it's bright yellow or dark, then you're not getting enough of water, fluid in you. So you want to make sure that when you urinate, you look down and see that it's pale yellow. That lets you know that you're getting enough water in you. And for the prolonged activities like a football game or basketball game where they're really exerting themselves and sweating, it's good to have those sports drinks where they are the electrolytes, because we're losing electrolytes when we sweat. So it's a good idea to start taking in the Gatorades and Powerades and all the other energy drinks uh, uh, during competition to aid in making sure these players are staying hydrated. But like I said earlier, we're just finding too many cases where a lot of kids are just falling out on the field, and you don't want them being dehydrated as that reason, and the coach being the person who's responsible for that. And so I think a responsible coach is you make sure your players are hydrated. It's not gonna be detrimental that you take an extra water break and let them recover by getting some water. But at the same time, you don't let them use it as a crutch. But that is very, very important. Water, like you mentioned earlier, Deshaun, it's necessary and it's vital to sustain life.
/workbook, or check out the show notes page and click on the link. And now back to the show. Hey, Leland, I know we got Leland Johnson on the call with us today. Leland, what's some of your thoughts on proper hydration, or what's been your experience, or how do you incorporate that into your programming with your athletes?
I just use common sense. It's what the body is made of. It's what the bodies consist of. So if your body consists of what is it, Sean? How much? What's the percentage of your
Like
body is
70%.
H2O?
Yeah, 70%.
Say it again.
Mm-hmm.
70%.
Yep.
Well, common sense would tell you to keep replenishing your body with that ingredient. So I've never been on the water makes you soft tip. It just didn't make any sense to me. So sometimes you just got to use common sense through the evolution of watching, the physical or the change in uh, how can you say the change in your physical well being. You gotta kind of just use common sense. Don't jump into the scientific side of doing things, or don't consume yourself with too much information.
Mm-hmm. One thing I also wanted to add was when players come back from being ill, that's another thing you want to make sure they're hydrated. If they had the flu and they were throwing up or they had diarrhea, you want to make sure that they're hydrated. So as a coach, that's why I'm a big proponent of having athletic trainers on staff at the high school levels, because they will be aware. Some coaches aren't aware, and a lot of them don't have time to be aware because they're coaching. But if a player comes back from being ill, chances are they're probably dehydrated. So you really want to be aware and make sure that person's is hydrated enough to perform. Uh, Case in point, the tackle for the Minnesota Viking, Corey Stringer, when he died, he had just came back from being ill. So he came back on the field. I think he was battling the flu and came back on the field, and they were practicing, and he became dehydrated, and eventually he passed. So when you said common sense, that made me think, that's another thing they want to be aware of is if players coming back after being ill, you want to keep a good eye on them. And not only was Corey ill, he's also one of the big guys. He's one of the linemen, the guys that carrying extra body fat and extra size. So it's very important that we really keep an eye on that. And my mentor in college, Louisa Munger, she really taught that to me, and I thank her for that.
We're going to turn the corner and we're going to get into sleep, and it's like Leland said earlier, some things are just common sense, but nevertheless, I'm still going to dive into the literature from time to time. And what Tudor Bompa is discussing in periodization, theory and methodology of training for the athlete, and we're talking elite level and high level athletes, that we definitely we need 9 to 10 hours a day of sleep. And what he also expresses is that 80 to 90% of that should be at night. So where's the other 10 or 20%? That might be in the daytime with anywhere from 10, 15 to 20-minute naps. But what the literature also says is when you get past a half an hour, you might run into what's called sleep inertia, or what's been labeled as post-sleep performance impairment, where you might sleep too long. So I felt that. I've taken an hour and a half nap, 2-hour-and-a-half naps throughout the day. And typically that generally happens is, from my experience, I was just up too late. Now, what I want you to consider as parents, what I want you to consider as coaches, what's going on if your athlete is getting to school at 8 o'clock in the morning and they're falling asleep during first period? What's going on when they're lethargic in practice? What's going on when they have a bad attitude? It might be because they've been sleep deprived. And we were discussing before some of the factors that affect sleep when you consider our society today is we have an abundance of teenagers and young athletes that consume excessive amounts of caffeine. They consume excessive amounts of alcohol. You have the whole drug consumption. Are you on antidepressants? Are you on anxiety meds? Because you have to know this. Some of these things, whether they're prescribed or you're partying with these things, they're going to affect your sleep. Now, we've been talking about nutrition. Actually, before I go further, Sean, did you want to add to this?
No, as you were talking, I started thinking, when we started talking about the young kids, things that they're maybe not getting enough sleep. But do you recall when you're like preschool, what would they do at certain points of the day? They would have nap time. They would have downtime. But it seems like we knew the importance of that at that age, because if the kid didn't get his rest, they'd be cranky, and it wouldn't, things wouldn't work smoothly. So, but it seems like as we got older, we moved away from that. And I know here in America, we kind of shun that little rest period, like you say, during the daytime. But in other countries, they actually have it where they encourage you taking a nap in the daytime. Here, we're all about, no, we got to work, we got to work, got to work, got to work. But I think it's been counterproductive, as you've shown. Did you touched on? So those two things just came to my mind, that we knew how important nap time was. Other countries know how important sleep time is. but sometimes it seems to be lost on us here in America.
Yeah, I'm sorry. One of the other things I was going to add in relationship to this conversation is that we know that LeBron James, he spends in excess of up to $1.5 million a year on his personal trainers. His nutrition, where he has personal chefs. He also uses what's called a hyperbaric chamber. And the hyperbaric chamber is essentially oxygen therapy. It's been established for treatment for decompression sickness, a hazard found in scuba diving. It's been used to treat serious infections. They use it for the bubbles of air in your blood vessels and wounds, so you can heal a little bit faster or come back from injury. Basically, he uses it as a recovery, so as a prevention strategy. He trains in a way it's prevention. So then, if he is injured, and you'll notice when you do the research on him, he recovers faster from injury. With where he's at in his career. Some people, when you look at their careers, they have not performed nowhere near as this gentleman. I want to say that to say that he takes his, if you consider yourself as an elite level athlete, or you aspire to go to an elite level, you have to consider your nutrition. You have to consider your sleep. You have to consider your rest and recovery. Now, I want to stay on the sleep part here, because what's been proven is that some of the effects of acute sleep deprivation is reduced flexibility in thinking, impaired sense of humor, increased risk taking, poor mental judgment, reduced emotional intelligence, negative mindset, increased distractibility. So I'm saying this from, if you're a parent, if you're a coach, and you're seeing your student athlete or young people exhibit certain types of behaviors, you have to learn what's going on in their life as to why they're doing these things or why they're performing a certain way. I want to go into this further. I know Leland, what would you like to add to the sleep part?
Just man, you guys are hitting it all on point, man. It's again, I go back to common sense. What I use is common sense. I don't try to consume myself with too much information. A lot of these answers to these situations don't take you going to talk to a doctor or some expert. All it takes is for you to do your research. LeBron, probably 60 to 70% of the things that he does, but when they say he pays $1 million to make sure his body is in the right condition so he can perform well, a lot of what he's paying for is information. He's not paying for the procedure. He's paying for information because he don't have the time to consume that information. So as a parent, if you're an athlete that's really concerned about this, then it would behoove you to use common sense when you're receiving your information about these types of situations. So
And if you're listening to this, I know you're here is because the information we provide. And I want to add to that, if there are certain subjects or topics that you'd like us to discuss, don't hesitate to send me an email, Deshaun@sportsmastery.com. We would love to do the research. We would love to there's tons of information that we already have, so don't hesitate to let us provide that information for you. Go ahead, Leland.
I'll give you a good example. Early in the conversation, Sean was saying that a good form of replacement for protein was energy drinks. Okay. And then later on in the conversation, he was saying that we have to kind of pull ourselves back from that. Again, that's a situation where if you don't know how to receive that information, you may take that information that you just received from him, you might throw it away because you might go, okay, in one instance he said I need to use energy drinks, but then in another instance he's telling me I need to pull back off of it. That's where common sense comes into play.
And I'll also add that when you consider, your nutrition, if you're consuming the right things, it's going to help with your sleep. Now, no, Sean, you wanted to add something. Let us know what's on your mind concerning sleep and nutrition.
Well, actually, I wanted to go back. when we're talking about energy drinks, I was saying stay away from them. I said, but coffee is good. It is a performance enhancer, but as far as the Monster energy drinks, because of the sugar and the caffeine content in them, those are not good for the athletes to take. And that's what you see a lot of kids drinking those things during the day. And so I say, no, that's not what you want. If you're going to drink caffeine, coffee's fine, but too much coffee is not. So, I tell kids to stay away from it. Will they? They probably won't, because they seeing what their friends are taking. And I just give them the information. They're going to take what they want with the information and do with it. But as long as I told them I'm good with it, and give them another option besides the energy drinks.
Yeah, and what I do is I just try to steer my kids away from coffee, stuff like that, completely, because the everyday individual, the everyday human being, all you got to do is sit back, again, use common sense, and watch how they abuse coffee. My wife drinks coffee every morning, and I'm not going to say that it helps her health. I'm not going to say it makes her more aware, when she's going into work, and it's a pick me up. But somewhere during that day, there's a big letdown, because that's what caffeine does to you. It builds you up, and then all of a sudden crash. So I try to keep my kids away from that.
The operative word is abuse. So if anything you do, if you abuse it, it can be not good for you. If you drink, if all you eat are carbohydrates, then that's not going to be good for you. But coffee has been shown, the research has shown that it is a performance enhancer. And so it enhances your performance so much to the point that the U.S. Olympic Committee only allows Olympic athletes only so much. So if they come back with a test showing these levels of caffeine in your system, that you fell in a drug test. So it is a performance enhancer.
Yeah, I look at the Olympic Committee like this, man. We use them, and I'm not saying about you. I'm saying I see people use them when they have a viable point when they want to bring up. Then, in the same token, the Olympic Committee, there are a bunch of things that they do and they don't do that hurts the athlete. You know what I'm saying? A bunch of laws and jurisdictions that they go by that I feel that may hurt the athlete. It has to be beneficial for that entity. It's almost like the NCAA. That's the way I look at the Olympic Committee. Exactly like the NCAA.
I see your point, but again, that does not negate the fact that the research shows that caffeine is a performance enhancer.
Now, I will say this on the matter. I'm drinking some coffee right now. I might have 1 to 1.5 cups a day, but what I do is I will drink it in the morning. I don't consume it after 2 o'clock, because I know there is some literature that's saying the more you consume in the afternoon and into the evening, that's what's going to keep you up. You're doing caffeine, you're doing high. If you're going to choose to do it, I would say do it earlier in the day. If you're young, I would say disregard it. Now, for me, concerning sleep, I probably sleep on average 6 hours a night. I'm up to 11, sometimes 12 o'clock every night. However, I still get up at 5 in the morning. I take my little siesta in the afternoon when I get a chance. When we consider sleep, let's try to go to bed for the young athlete at the same time every day. And what's been found in the literature, it's those hours that you can get in before 12 o'clock. So can you get to bed or be in bed by 9:30 and knocked out by 10? So in considering sleep, and as Leland always says, and I appreciate, you have to use your common sense. You need 9 to 10 hours when you can in the day. If you got that last period or some break in the day, get your 15-minute nap. But if you're staying up too late, you shouldn't be falling asleep in class. That's telling me something. You're on the social media. And what I'm saying and what we're communicating here is it's common sense. If you're doing certain things socially, it's going to affect you psychologically. And socially, you can affect your performance. So it's going to come back. So that's what the beauty of this podcast is about, is we're talking about socially. We're talking about the things that you do socially that can affect you psychologically. And all you got to do is look at the literature. I could go pick up a sociology text and see what's going on in society. A lot of kids are partying in college. Naturally, it's going to trickle down into the athlete population. So the kid that's going to have an advantage is the one that's going to do things right socially, so you're not affected psychologically and externally.
And then to answer your question, to kind of add on that, what you were saying, I think what kids, what parents need to do, just take a step back, man, and not get into the newest end thing. Be patient. Don't put a rush on things. One thing about sleep, it's like a regeneration, man. It's beautiful for your body. Some days I know you can take a power nap. Shiny, I know you taking a power nap some days, an hour in the middle of the day, and it's like like that underdog, that pill that underdog used to take. You know what I'm saying? Your body just feels so much better by getting the needed rest. So just take your time, man. Take a step back and not be so rush on things. Don't overwork the body.
So I know, Sean, you have something to add. Before we get to that, I want to say what's been found in the literature is you turning off that device an hour before sleep. Now, Sean, I know you've done some research on that, and I want you to go ahead and bring us to the close on sleep before we go into our next topic.
Well, what I was gonna say, again, like Leland said, keeping it simple. If you know you're falling asleep, you may want to get some sleep. It's not rocket science. If you're dragging and you sluggish, get there a little earlier. I know for me though, I anything more than 5 hours, I'm sluggish. It's weird. It's ever since college. Ever since college, I'm 5 hours and I'm done. And there may be times during the week I may be tired and I'll just come home and take a nap and go to sleep. I don't care, because my body's telling me, hey, you need some sleep. But for the most part, I can go to bed at 10 o'clock and I'm up at 3:30, and that's fine for me. So I think we have to find that niche as far as our sleep. I know they say 7 to 8 hours, but I think people have to operate individually, and if they know 5 hours works for them and they're very productive throughout their day, then I think that's just that works for them, and they shouldn't try to force something that's not conducive to their body and their work habits. So
Mhm.
so yeah, me 7 8 hours. Oh, if I get 7 8 hours, something's wrong with me. I'm 5 hours and I'm up. I mean, I'm a morning person. My wife looks at me strange. Even when I was off work injured, I would still get up early, and do things because that was my clock. So I don't think with the sleep thing is very important, but everyone has a different sleep pattern and amount of sleep they need.
I'll also say to that, and I know, Sean, you being a researcher, Leland, you being a researcher, for me, I get my intellectual work on my clock. I do it best in the morning. I wake up, I read for an hour, 2 hours. We're podcasting this morning because that's when I'm the freshest. I'm going to hit a wall like around 1 or 2 o'clock. But anything that intellectual research that requires thinking or problem solving, for me, I have to get it done in the morning.
That was a beautiful point you brought up because I was just thinking that everybody has a different biological clock, and you have to again pay attention to your biological clock and do accordingly. React accordingly.
Now I can see if you're a part-time coach, if you work swing shift and you have different things going on like that, your sleep is going to be a little bit different. But the fact of the matter remains is go to maintain some consistency at what time you go to sleep and what time you get up. The other thing that I want to add to all of this, and as we often say, these are four to five bullet points. If you're a parent listening to this, if you're a student athlete listening to this, you're a coach. Number one, do your research. Number two, trust your body. Number three, listen to your inner voice. Number four, and this might be the same thing, use your own intuition. And the last one is experiment to see which methods benefit you the most. Sean, would you like to add to that before we go further?
Yeah, yeah, I did want to add one more thing about sleep deprivation. I do recall years ago when I was working. Actually, we had different shift work for the security police officers at Lawrence Livermore Lab where I work as well. We were looking at what was going on, trying to figure out what worked best, and we found that sleep deprivation, you know, mimicked like you're drunk driving. So if you didn't have enough sleep hours, you're you were operating at a point as if you were drunk driving. So that's another point that that can be brought up, that if you're sleep deprived and you're operating, especially a vehicle, it's almost, you can be swerving, or your reaction time, like you mentioned earlier, Deshaun, your cognitive process is a little bit slower. So yeah, it has been shown to mimic some of the attributes of drunk driving.
I was explaining earlier that one of our references was Dr. Mary Morrell, out of the United Kingdom. And the last bullet point that I got from her, or that really resonated, was that acute sleep deprivation leads to profound effects on cognitive ability and mood that are likely to influence performance in athletes. Okay, if you've been with us, you see we're discussing some points for elite performance. And there's things that you have to do off of the field. And that concerns your performance, or that concerns your nutrition. You can see how nutrition plays a vital role in aiding your recovery and your rest. Sleep is very important. Now we're getting in, and when I say sleep, we're talking about passive recovery. Now we're getting into some active recovery modalities, such as massage, spinal and joint manipulation, cryotherapy, thermal therapy, electrotherapy, acupuncture and acupressure, flexibility training for its therapeutic uses, and I'll even add hot yoga. Now, for the sake of conversation, we're not going to touch on all of these. Now, Leland, you mentioned acupuncture and acupressure. I want you to start this conversation in terms of the importance of recovery for athletes, elite level athletes, or people who aspire to be at the elite level.
Um, Again, the massage therapy, acupuncture, yoga is very, very important. Is a very important a part of this process. I mean, you guys know the yoga part takes care of flexibility. There's also some mental stimulation in yoga because you get to meditate. Meditation is something that we don't do a lot of because of, like you guys said, social activities and different things that are in this world today. Just yesterday, me and a couple of my athletes, or every Thursday, what we do is right now we're in a 4 day a week workout schedule, and every Thursday after one of our workouts, we're in a yoga class for an hour, and all of my athletes are now telling me how they're feeling, not only physically, but telling me how they're feeling mentally, how they're not feeling pressured. When they go to school the next day, they feel like they can attack the whole, like one of my girls said, 3 or 4 days afterwards, I feel so much better. It makes me feel so much at peace. These are really simplistic, commonsensical type of things that you can use to enhance your abilities on the court, football field, whatever you're trying to do if you're an elite athlete.
I like what you said earlier about like certain committees, Leland, certain organizations, even you, Sean, because you could look at massage, we could take cryotherapy, thermotherapy, electrotherapy, even flexibility training, yoga, hot yoga. And you can find somewhere in the literature where it's going to be some scientist or somebody out there that's going to say, no, that this doesn't work or you shouldn't do this. What I want to say to you is be the doctor of your own body, do your own research, and to really discover what works for you. And I found that, you know, I'll put some ice on me, even just to it'll help with the inflammation. It'll also help with my on the mental side. I like getting in the hot tub. I like sitting in the sauna. You know, so certain things you might find in certain literature. If you're a parent and you want to listen to what everybody else is saying, don't do that. Just take action. See if it works for you. You know, it might not necessarily heal an injury or it might take you longer, but what's more important is you having time to relax and just rest and get off of your feet. You know, Sean, I know you had some things that you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, no, when Leland was talking about the yoga, also, I know we're talking with dealing with athletes, but one of the things that I implemented with our security police officers, and these are guys well into their 40s. I think one guy maybe 60, and some of these guys, they're macho, you carry around their guns, and I implemented yoga with them, and they kind of laughed at me in the beginning. And I went to YouTube, uses yoga with Adrian. I mean, I knew that I can get their attention because she's easy on the eyes, so I know that would get them to sit in front of the TV. And so I was doing it with them. And so we were doing things and, they're cracking jokes and trying to get into it. But lo and behold, the next day when they came in, they had nothing but good things to say about it. And here are these older individuals, and they talked about how, they didn't have any back issues the rest of that day, that they felt free, they felt looser, their hips weren't bothering them. That was only on one day. And so, introducing them to that opened them up to some other possibilities, whereas they may not have wanted to do that if nobody took the chance and showed them. So I believe it works because I did it on myself, and I felt how good, how well I moved, how I recovered. So by using it on me, I figured, okay, let's try it on these guys, and it worked. So I'm a big fan of yoga.
Again, what that does is it goes back to what I was saying about the information thing. Because I guess like Deshaun said, there are some experts that say that yoga is not beneficial for the body. Um, and just like you just discovered, Deshaun, Sean, you just discovered that for my group of individuals, it did work. And then, use common sense. Again, as you get older, what's the first thing that starts to go on the human body? What's the first thing, the first function? Flexibility. Flexibility. So common sense would tell you, if anybody's telling you don't do these things or these things can be detrimental to your body, and there's experts that say that. There's experts that say static stretching. Oh no, don't static stretch before an activity. You want to do this type of stretching before an activity. But for certain people, that may not work for you. I had a group of when Jazz was a freshman. I had a group of probably about 8 kids on my team that they would watch me and Jazz static stretch before the game, and they would go, "Well, I thought that wasn't good for you." I said, "Well, it all depends on you as a person. It all depends on you." Before the year was out, I was static stretching about 6, 7 to 8 kids. And if you ever really static stretch someone and really did it thoroughly, man, you sweating after the first kid. So, again, use common sense. Do like Deshaun says, be the doctor of your own body. Because to be honest with you, even though these guys go to school and to study the human body, you may know your body better than that doctor. Matter of fact, he uses you to probably understand you a little bit better in order to treat you. So trust yourself. Put that trust in yourself and utilize that trust in diagnosing what's wrong with you and fixing it.
I was going to also say, man, that like you could talk to yoga purists and they're down hot yoga. But about a couple years ago, we were consistently going out. I was taking a handful, about 6 of my athletes out to Forge hot yoga in the Portland metro area. And I know you got the whole detox thing. You got a chance to get a good sweat. You also had a chance to work on your flexibility and your mobility. And what we found is that we were able to deadlift better, we were able to squat better, and then we also had a chance to just relax. And this would be on a Sunday. So we would use the hot yoga as a recovery day. And we were fortunate enough to be a part of the community. Shout out to Forge Hot Yoga in the Portland metro area that has 3 locations. But they were very slow and attentive, and they helped us. Oh, all I'm saying is I found some hot yoga that worked for me. The athletes really appreciated. They appreciated the one-on-one attention. Like they knew that we were new and we never had done hot yoga before. And you're sitting in a class with like 30, in excess of 30 people in a large studio. We found that to be very beneficial for us on a Sunday that we would use and 4:30 in the evening. So if they had to go to church or do any of the religious activities, we still had time to go do that. And it worked for me. And I still do yoga to this day. And it has definitely helped me increase my mobility and my flexibility. I know, Sean, you had something to add.
Yeah, yeah. One thing I want to add, we talk about the research and what scientists say, and then what we shouldn't do and what we should do. Um, there's a such thing. There, placebo effect is real,
Yes.
and I had to, you know, come to grips with it as well. You might read the research says don't do this. I mean, for the most part, a lot of times if the research says something over and over and over and over, you can believe it. But again, we're individuals.
Yep.
So if
Yep.
the research said we should do this, we shouldn't do this, and we implement something, for our athlete, and it shows his performance or her performance improve, then I'm for it. If I told an athlete to hold this rock, it's going to make you jump higher. Hold it for 5 minutes and throw it away. It'll make you jump higher. Now, is there any study that supports that? Probably not. But if I do that and the athlete is able to jump higher, it works. You know, that's what I'm saying. It works. So if they think it works and it gets them to that next level and it makes them better, I'm all for it as long as I'm doing something right by them and I'm not doing something illegal or something detrimental. I mean, if it's something simple, I'm all for it. But some of this research, we can't just apply it to everything practically. Yeah, it was right for that group that they did the experiment on, and we take it for what it is. Maybe we use it for our athlete and it doesn't work. If we use it for another athlete, it works. So sometimes we can't get so caught up into the literature. All we want is what's best for our athlete and to get them to the next level and to get them better so they could, be a better athlete and perform better. So I'm just saying we can't get caught up into the literature too much. Just like you said, Leland, you static stretch jazz. We know what the literature says. I know some people do a static stretch and then they do a dynamic warm up. Some people don't do it at all. So, whatever is going to get that athlete properly and mentally prepared to go into competition and perform well, I'm all for it.
Man, that's weird because to share an experience of mine, I think I shared it with you before. When I was going through my little injury that I had, I had doctors tell me I was never going to walk again. My motor skills would never be the same, and that's because I had, because I had, shot in the head and I had some brain injury. Well, um, at that time, I could have easily accepted the diagnosis and said, well, this is what I'm going to be, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is what my life is going to consist of. I'm lucky for me, I was hard headed. I'm extremely hard headed. And I would do things on a daily basis to kind of counter that. When they said I wasn't able to move a certain area of my body, well, guess what I do? I spend the whole day trying to move that part of my body, trying to get it stimulated. And it's weird because One day I come into the doctor and I got these. I feel like 10 million needles sticking the left side of my body. I mean, continuously. 10 million needles, like, you just feel it every time you walk or touch something. Going to the doctor, and guess what he told me? Hey, man, your nerves are starting to react again. You're getting the feeling back in your body again. How did you do that? And here's a guy with a PhD. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how many countless operations he's probably done, but it was just me using common sense and saying that, I'm not going to accept your diagnosis for one. Two, I know there's some things that I can do to kind of make this better on my own. And I did those things. So it kind of it left me in a place where when I talk to physicians or doctors, I listen to what they say, but I don't take it as the holy grail. You know what I'm saying? I don't take it as this is the end. Okay, you guys have the exact answer to what this is. And that's the beautiful part about when you get into physical enhancement and you get into, taking care of your body. These are all things you just gonna have to experiment with. You gotta do like the doctors do. They do research and they experiment, and you gotta do the same thing.
I also want to add, and I know we're talking about doctors, people with PhDs. We're talking about science and scientists. Just science on its most basic level and definition is observation, examination, and explanation of a certain hypothesis. That's all it is. So it might be you observing, learning, or studying what you want to do to yourself, and then you go do it, and then you explain the results to somebody or to yourself on its most simplest level, and you figure out what works for you. So we're definitely not into bashing doctors or science. We're just saying learn how to be the doctor of your own body and experiment on yourself, but when you can, versus letting somebody else experiment on you. We've been talking about hot yoga. You hear a lot about cryotherapy. I like putting on ice. It helps me relax. It does bring down the inflammation. Sean, what's some of your thoughts on cryotherapy?
Oh no, definitely. I mean, ice reduces the inflammation, uh, and also helps to regenerate the tissues. But not too long ago, I mean, probably I would say maybe a year ago, they were showing that it had that it really didn't help like they thought it would. But again, you know, I know for me, when I've got injuries and I put ice on it, it's reduced the inflammation. It made me feel better. So I just took that piece of research with a grain of salt. I know what it did for many athletes that I've treated, whether it be an ice pack or ice bath. This submersion, sitting in a tub of ice. Um, and so for me, I know it has worked. So I'm not going to all of a sudden, because this research shows that ice may not be what we thought it was. I'm like, okay, that's fine. That's what you found, but for me, this worked, and for the individuals that I work for, it works. So I'm all for it. For as injuries and regeneration, tissue regeneration, and getting ready to perform at the next contest.
I think the one mainstay in this whole in talking about all these subjects is the one thing is you have to be diligent to find out information for yourself. In all of this that we're talking about, the one main thing that you can concentrate on and focus on is you have to be able to you have to be able to want to do research on whatever it is that you're inquisitive about. If it's something again, I had my cousin, I had Sean, I had him. I picked up the phone and whatever I didn't know, I had to call him. Now, you may not have that, so you might have to pick up some literature. You might have to go get a book. You might have to go ask somebody, hey, this is what I'm going through right now. What did you do? But that's the one main thing you can't get away from. You can't get away from doing your research. You can't get away from being inquisitive and asking questions. That's the one main thing that you have to do throughout all of this. And if you stay consistent with that, then you should be able to get through this with no problem. Or write out $1 million check like LeBron does, and then say, hey, help me out with my body. You tell me what I need to do for myself. That's going to help me. That's going to make me better. So it's either or.
Right. I'll also add with the cryotherapy, whether you're treating yourself with ice or if you're doing ice massage, you're sitting in a cold bathtub, or if you're sitting in one of those tanks with ice, what's been found in the literature is that the colder it is, the less time you have to be in there. So sometimes it literally might be a soak for 3 to 5 minutes. If you're in a bathtub with just your cold water, maybe you can sit in there for 15 or 20 minutes. In general, they're saying ice for 15 to 20 minutes, then come back an hour later, in
Yep.
terms of a recovery or regenerative process. I know, Sean, you can add to this because you're a certified athletic trainer. Let's hear your thoughts on this matter of cryotherapy.
Yeah, actually, yeah, like you mentioned, you ice an area too long, it has the reverse
Yep.
effect. So it senses your body as being frozen, or what you call it, um, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Geez, I can't, my brain
Rigor
farted.
mortis. Rigor
Um,
mortis.
no, not rigor mortar, but
Because that's the way it feel. It feel like that.
hypothermic. That's
Okay.
it,
Yeah.
hypothermic. So your body goes into hypothermia. So the temperature drops too low, and what it does is shoots fluid to that area in an attempt to warm it. So then it starts to swell. So you put ice on there to decrease the inflammation, but keeping it on there longer, the body senses it as being hypothermic, and more fluids going to the area. So it's going to have the reverse effect. So that's why you want to make sure you don't keep ice on it too long. One of the rule of thumbs that we normally do, if there's not a lot of fat or muscle between the area, so like if it's a wrist, we don't leave it on there as long. We leave it on there maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Now, if it's a thigh or a hamstring or a glute, we'll leave it on there. I would say 15. Some people have gone into 30 minutes. And as like Deshaun says, once it's on that period of time, leave it off for an hour, let the body regenerate, the body temperature, and then put it on. So you may like 15 to 20 minutes every hour. Don't go 15, 20 minutes, and then take it off for 5 minutes and put it on another 15, 20 minutes. So yeah, just take it off for an hour, and then place it back on. Otherwise, you may run the risk of putting your body in what is perceived as a hypothermia and have the reversed effects of what you're trying to accomplish.
A lot of times the newfangled thing isn't the answer. Because Jazz and I, we tried cryotherapy in the cryotherapy chamber. We tried that and it was interesting, but I felt, or he felt, that he got much more out of just dumping some water, dump some ice in the tub, putting some water in the tub, and sitting in the tub. He said the way his body felt. Now, don't get me wrong. When you first get in that cold tub, it's a shock to your body. But once you settle in and you sit there for the 15, 20 minutes and you get out, I haven't had an athlete sit back and say, man, I feel like I got totally new legs. Now, the cryotherapy, I think what it does is it takes a little time to work. And so I guess you can get your treatment. And then after that, I guess it'll start to take effect. But the old school way of getting right in that tub and putting some ice in the tub, for my athletes, it seemed like they benefit from that more than they do being in a cryotherapy chamber.
I'll say before we close out, some of these modalities are like 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 years old before there was a such thing called science. Now, before we close out, I want to touch on spinal and joint manipulation. And for me, I've had a credible and incredible experience being associated with the Portland Athletic Center of Excellence, where I'm around physical therapists, chiropractors, and sometimes we have osteopaths that come through. There's also licensed massage therapists there and acupuncturists. So for me, it's like I'm around continuing education every day. Now, I appreciate working with the physical therapist. I appreciate working with the chiropractor. I appreciate working with and literally getting physical treatments, and then them having them saying, do this on your own, or if your girlfriend or if one of your athletes needs help with this, show them how to do this at their own home. Sean, what's been your experience working with physical therapists and chiropractors, and maybe even osteopaths?
Well, physical therapist, that's, actually where I got my first start out of college. I worked in a physical therapy clinic under actually Don Chu's clinic, and that was a great experience, learning how to properly use modalities and rehabilitative techniques, uh, with certain patients. It was a great learning environment, with them, well, not only Don, but the individuals he hired. So I was constantly learning. Um, and I've seen some great things happen in the clinic. It definitely works if you get with the right individual. Just based on my experience, though, when dealing with athletes, I always tell them to go to a PT with an athletic background, not a P. And it's just my preference. Somebody may have a different point of view, which is okay. But my preference is to get with a PT that has an athletic background, that understands athletes and athletic movements, and knows where this person needs to get back to, and also understand the mindset as well. Because some of the PTs get into the mindset as, oh, we only want to do this much. We don't want to venture into that. But if the person can tolerate it and it's not being detrimental to them, then they may want to leak in, to progressing a little bit more. So I always tell them to go to someone with that athlete mindset. Especially if you don't have to go to ones who are used to dealing with the geriatric or the older individuals, because I think your progress is going to be expedited a lot more. So I really encourage people to look for that. Overall, um, like we alluded to earlier, people have to be a big proponent of self. Don't always give your one person the total control uh, of your health. You have to have some responsibility in this. Like Leland mentioned, doing some research, or if you have that person that you trust and you know that they're on their game, and they do the research, and they know that if there's something they don't know, that they can find a person who does know, then that is another resource as well. But you have to be a big proponent of self, because you know as much as these individuals do go to school, some of them can lead you down the wrong path. So you have to be all about doing what's right for you, what's right for your kid. Because when you look at some of these coaches, a lot of money, or practitioners, money's involved, and sometimes when money's involved, they may not have your best interest at heart. They just want you to open up your wallet and keep pouring money out. So by all means, be diligent, do the research, find an individual that supports you and that has your best interest at heart. But getting back to the PT, yes, if you're an athlete, go to someone who understands athletes and can get you back on the field or the court.
I was going to say before we close out, in relationship to what Sean was saying, I'm more likely going to trust. I'm definitely going to trust a PT that was an athlete. I'm going to trust a PT that still does barbell, kettlebell work. I'm going to trust a PT that works with athletes, especially pro athletes. I'm going to trust a PT, that just has that experience, that can talk and relate to me, and that has that background. So that's my personal preference. I'm a big fan of Dave McHenry at the Portland Athletic Center of Excellence. I'm a key holder there. I appreciate some of the work that Kelly Starrett is doing. I appreciate the work that Dave Smits is doing in the Midwest. And he's a PT. Kelly Starrett is a PT. These guys, they all have doctorates in physical therapy. I appreciate what David McHenry is doing. So as Sean said, find somebody, if you're going to a physical therapist or a chiropractor, that can help you. Find somebody that works with athletes that can talk to you and speak your language. The Sports Mastery Workbook was created for the student athlete and the parent to work through together. The Sports Mastery Workbook was created for the student athlete and the coach to work through together. It was created in a sense and in a way to bridge the gap in communication between these parties and build a successful relationship dynamic. To learn more, visit sportsmastery.com/workbook or check out the show notes page and click on the link.